I'm Andrew Harwood, and I was born in Wyerton, Ontario in 1966, like a long time ago. And I lived there until I was in my 20s. I went to art school in Halifax, Nova Scotia College of Art and Design. I came out at art college and was encouraged to, I don't know, encouraged, but supported in making work that was gay and queer. Then I graduated into a recession in 1991, and I worked as a janitor at York University here in Toronto, off and on, for about 3 or 4 years. I made artwork about being a gay janitor and performances. One exhibition I did in a friend's storefront window was called Wieners and Mops, and I coated probably, I think it was 400 plastic hot dogs, because I'd also been a hot dog vendor. So I made art about these different ways of making a living. And around the same time, I had an exhibition at Mercer Union, which is an artist-run center here in Toronto. And it was called Janitor Cologne. Excuse me. And I made cologne out of cleaning smells. And I had this installation, and people could come in and try on these different, like lemon lime or lilac was Lady Janitor. And I made a kind of mock advertising campaign where I was bent over cleaning. Basically, you can see the crack of my ass, and I said, "Parfum by Harwood." So it was kind of an interesting social interaction between the audience and myself through fragrance. It kind of spoiled me for cleaning my own house, because once you've been paid for cleaning, you never want to do it for free after that. After those shows, I became involved with a artist-run center here called A Space, and most notably, I did a fashion show. It was called Photo Fetish Fashion, and I invited people from the queer communities and beyond to do kind of performative fashion based on fetish. And one edition of that was in the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, like all the local newspapers, and then all the weeklies, because it was quite controversial. A woman, a friend of mine who's a dominatrix, Miss Barbara Fish, she carved a lamb carcass with a chainsaw as part of her performance, and she had her slaves going around sweeping up the lamb meat into dustpans with which was kind of wonderful and quite evocative. But a lot of people felt kind of victimized by it in some ways, and so that was a kind of a big door opener for me, was doing these kind of special events. I also started showing around 2000 with Paul Petro, contemporary art. I showed with him up until recently, so about 17 years. And I'm really grateful for those opportunities I had with him. He's also a gay man. I often have thought that my own work would never sell because it's so weird or experimental or so gay or queer in some ways, and so kind of feminine, that I didn't know there would be an audience or a market for that work. So I'm very happy to have had those experiences. Around 2006 time period, I started doing Madame Zsa Zsa, the $2 psychic. And it was a performance I did in drag, and I would try to have really kooky, colorful, crazy outfits to wear, and I would sit down with members of the public and I would charge them $2, because I thought, a lot of people were asking me for advice, and oh, you're so successful and this and that. And I thought, well, why don't I kind of semi-institutionalize this by doing performance? And the performance was basically just talking to people, and I held their hands and I designed it. I did a bit of research on how to read people, which is also kind of funny in the queer and drag world. It's like there's a lot of reading going on. Much later, I came to the idea that it was a kind of drag social relativist performance. And I often thought, people don't sit down, or people don't often have conversations with drag performers because they're often on stage or they're performing. So it's not necessarily about a certain kind of intimacy. It does trigger certain people's certain responses that are homophobic or drag or transphobic or gender fucked-phobic, if you will. It still freaks certain people out in certain communities, and I find that interesting, and I think that's where the value lays in that type of performance or doing that type of work. And I have a dear friend who is supposed to be showing at Tom Thompson, and it was about Tom Thompson being gay. and that's been sort of in the rumor mill of Canadian art for forever. But he wasn't allowed to do it because the curator there said, no one in this town wants to see what you're doing. And it may have included some nudity or something that was maybe overtly queer in its content. And this is a huge issue in the arts in Canada too. There are people who are really conservative, who work for what you might think of as liberal and left and inclusive institutions, and in fact they're not. And it was kind of like a highlight of my life, those 7 years at Zsa Zsa. I was moved in 1998. I opened the gallery in 99. The early days of Zsa Zsa were pretty exciting. And as I mentioned, it was a lot of prostitution on the street. There was a lot of crack and crystal, probably pre-crystal meth, but certainly a lot of crack, cocaine on the street. And there were transgender prostitutes working in our neighborhood. It was certainly not gentrified. There were still rooming houses. Artists were living in storefronts like I was with my roommate. And it was also exciting because, you know, there were 3 or 4 new little galleries opening up around the same time, including Zsa Zsa. My rent was incredibly cheap. It was $700 for like 2,000 square feet. It was like dreamy. So a lot of artists had their first exhibitions there, which was great. The reviews, like there were reviews up the yin yang. Some years there were more reviews from Zsa Zsa, which might have been, the gallery itself though was quite small. It might have been, I don't know, 20 feet by 20 feet, maybe a little bit bigger than that. But the reviews, some years I got more reviews in the Art Gallery of Ontario, or the Power Plant. It was a very queer kind of space in many regards, and things on drag were happened there. And you know, Rebecca Belmore, who's a famous Indigenous artist, did her first exhibition there, and she's shown at the Venice Biennale, for example. So you kind of go like, I don't mean to be braggy. These are people just who kind of came into my life. On the downside, it does take a toll on you. You don't have a lot of personal life. You go to bed a gallery director and wake up one. It's kind of a funny absence of privacy. I closed my gallery in 2005. I had actually felt that the neighborhood at 2005 was already over gentrified, and that's 12 years ago. So the hotels moved in, the Drake Hotel, the Gladstone Hotel, the bars moved in because the real estate value on Queen West went insane. The condos went crazy. The retail and the high-end retail. Like, I think art can, fuck you, Richard Florida, like for figuring out and telling real estate developers how to get neighborhoods to become more valuable, like invite the artists in or encourage them into these cheap spaces. But we don't have any of those spaces left in Toronto. I think there's also a certain level of poverty that I've lived in, and you're watching people all around you who are extraordinarily rich, involved in the arts. And I'm maybe a little bit bitter and a little bit jealous. I don't mind saying that, but I also think it's hard to bear witness to sometimes. Like, it seems bear witness to, or it's hard to be supportive of those people when you go, really? Like, I didn't see you raising money at a space for all sorts of different shows from all people of all different walks of life. I didn't see you trying to, write a grant to get this gallery relocated. I didn't see you donating to this, anyways. It's my little bitter rant about being involved in the arts. Like, I have my dining room table. My mom's dining room table I use as my creative area to work at. I did a series of about 35 works on masonite and a bunch of works on paper that are about interior design. They're about the colors that people would use in interior design. They're almost entirely painted with stencil marking. And they're kind of impressionist. And they're kind of tacky, which also fits into my worldview of tacky and beautiful, or tacky and precious, and or campy. So I made that body of work while I was up north. So I am trying to play also in this work with textiles patterns and interior design pattern and things that, and gift wrap, things that you would probably throw away or that aren't necessarily permanent. So I'm probably trying to give it a semi-permanence. I often think that my work is very cheerful and very uplifting, but sometimes people have seen a lot of sadness in my work, and I'm very fascinated by that, and I'm okay with it now. I don't think that I might have been in the past. I mean, it's hard to encapsulate a 30-year career in art, 26 or whatever it is. But I want to be the artist. I think that's where I am now, because I'm like post midlife crisis. My parents are dead. I'm free to do whatever I want. I inherited a very, very small amount of money, so I can have a bit of time to create stuff. And I think if I was younger, I would have just withered it away and not done anything. But now I'm like, well, the clock's ticking, Marg. Like I gotta make some work, you know. And I'm more in love with making work than I have been, even if I don't care. I think the thing is, I don't care if it looks great or if it's important or it's going to change the world. I think I probably felt that way at some point. And I was so impassioned, and I go, those goals are kind of unachievable as an artist. And some, maybe I'm having a bit of break. Maybe the work I'm making is very political and I can't see it. I think often because it is so feminine and so queer in some ways that it's hard for me to see it. Do you know what I'm saying? So, you know, those are maybe some of my goals right now, is to try to create this work that is not necessarily overtly political, yet it retains a lot of identity and a lot of political quality. I mean, you know, craft is a really interesting place for me, and the intersection between craft and visual art and queer and emotion. Like, okay, that's enough.
Okay.
That's it.